But first, our top story. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is ready to take on the U.S. government if Elizabeth Warren wins the presidency. This is from leaked audio obtained by The Verge of Zuckerberg during a July meeting with employees.
Like Elizabeth Warren, who thinks that the right answer is to break up the companies, if she gets elected president, then I would bet that we will have a legal challenge, and I would bet that we will win the legal challenge. Does that still suck for us? Yeah. I don't have to, have a major lawsuit against our own government. That's not like the position that you want to be in when you're, it's like we care about our country and want to work with our government to do good things. And but look, at the end of the day, if someone's going to try to threaten something that existential, you go to the mat and you fight.
Zuckerberg also spoke on a lot of other topics, including Facebook's proposed cryptocurrency, Libra, and its competition with Chinese-based video app TikTok. Joining me to discuss in Washington, Carl Szabo, General Counsel for NetChoice, their lobbying group that represents big tech companies like Facebook and Google. And in studio with me, Sarah Fryer, who covers Facebook for us. So, Sarah, just first give me your reaction to what we heard from Zuckerberg saying they're ready to fight.
Well, Zuckerberg has had pretty good luck in his fights with the government so far. If you think about the ways he's testified in front of Congress, nothing really came out of that. He had a $5 billion FTC fine this year, which is just a slap on the wrist in many respects. He's had a pretty good track record of coming up against the U.S. government and winning. So it isn't surprising to me that he thinks that it would totally suck, in his words. But also a little bit surprising to be declaring victory so soon before it happens.
Yeah, Carl, let me bring you in here. From your perspective, how concerned are companies like Facebook and big tech when they think about a person like Elizabeth Warren getting the presidency?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. What you're seeing is Mark Zuckerberg being very excited and being very transparent in his discussion about what's going on. Now, there are a lot of businesses, not just in the tech sector, but across the entire spectrum, that are worried about the notion of just being broken up because they're big. And what you're seeing here today is Mark Zuckerberg talking about the rule of law and the fact that under the existing rule of law, the government just doesn't have a case to bring against Facebook.
And Carl, how prepared or not prepared are these companies to take on what could be a serious legal challenge?
I think all these businesses look back over the past decade, seen what's gone on, what's transpired, and they are fired up. They are ready for an enforcement action against them, and they've got great legal standing, they've got great attorneys, and more importantly, they've got the rule of law on their side.
Sarah, it was really interesting that Carl brought up the word transparent. What was your take on Zuckerberg once this was leaked, promoting it and being fully transparent on Facebook and saying, okay, here it is, here's the whole thing, and posting it on Facebook?
I think he really has no other choice. Zuckerberg has had a lot of gaffes over the years, and he's been asked to testify by many governments, and he's said no. He said no to anyone sort of beyond. He testified in the U.S. and then he testified in Europe, but there have been a lot of questions about whether he'll come to the U.K., whether he'll go again to Congress. And this is a way to say, look, this is how I am when I'm raw, when I'm not, being turned into memes because of the way I sip water, under the, camera in front of congressional testimony. This is how he is in front of his employees, and you can tell that he's so much more natural that way. He does this every week. They film it, they send it to all the employees, everyone can watch it over the weekend. It is really a tradition there, it's very interesting to see him in his element.
And when you look at the company, does this sort of rally the troops, if you will, or does this hurt morale when leaks like this, of meetings that, like you say, happen on a weekly basis, are exposed?
This is the first time I can remember that a whole audio transcript of a meeting has been released. So it does speak to the tension within the employee ranks, that a lot of the employees aren't sure if they're working for a company that is on the right side of history, and they are questioning him. You see in the transcript that they ask him about his voting power several times. and sort of challenge his authority at the top of Facebook. And he responds by saying, referring to something that happened in 2006 as the reason why he's allowed to keep authority. The fact that he turned down the $1 billion acquisition offer from Yahoo. So it's very interesting to see how he goes up against those questions over and over.
Carl, to be fair, I want to bring in a tweet that we also got from Senator Elizabeth Warren in response to this, and my team here will pull it up. She says, quote, "It's a corrupt system that lets Facebook engage in illegal anti-competitive practices. They continue to fumble their responsibility to protect our democracy." What do you think of Elizabeth Warren's response?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that question. Whether it's anti-competitive, well, it's hard to say that there's no competition when you see Mark Zuckerberg expressing internally that they're worried about competition from new market entrants like TikTok. On privacy, I mean, they just had a $5 billion settlement with the FTC, which I've said before, the FTC was lucky to even get that out of them. And with respect to protecting our democracy, I mean, we're here on Bloomberg TV. I don't think Michael Bloomberg is going to use this network to change the outcome of the election any more than I expect Mark Zuckerberg to use Facebook. So I think that Senator Warren is just throwing a lot of stuff at Facebook and hoping that maybe that helps her in the polls.
Carl, I want to bring up another audio clip that we have that The Verge, of course, did obtain in this audio recording here. Take a listen.
It's just that breaking up these companies, whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon, is not actually going to solve the issues. And, it doesn't make election interference less likely. It makes it more likely because now the companies can't coordinate and work together.
Carl, your reaction to Zuckerberg saying that breaking up big tech, whether it be at Facebook, Amazon, or Google, doesn't actually solve the problem. It makes it harder to regulate because instead of one big company, you have 20 companies.
Well, it's not just only a matter of regulating 20 different companies. Let's keep in mind that there are over a dozen different government agencies that have oversight over the tech industry. But it's also the notion of having a centralized place where platforms can figure out what content is spam, what content are bots, what content is coming from overseas, and then in a more comprehensive fashion, address those problems. So that's what I think Mark's talking about here. Since Facebook is rather large, they do have the financial backing and the ability to see many different points of attack so that it can better prepare and protect American interests and American democracy.
And Sarah, talk to me about Facebook's argument, really, and I've heard this from several experts
hear it over and over, this argument that being bigger helps them solve the problems more efficiently and with better resources. I just don't really buy it. I think that if you're Facebook and you have all of these different services, certainly you can say if you're finding this problem on Instagram, you might find it on Messenger too, and you might find it on WhatsApp. But there's also some collaborations they've done with companies outside of Facebook. They have this Atlantic Council to take down terrorist content, and they share this terrorist content amongst themselves. They do the same thing with child exploitation content so that all the companies can take it down at once. And so if the companies were broken up, you could easily have that same kind of arrangement where they all share information broadly.
And Sarah, I want to pivot quickly here a little bit to competition because Carl brought up the very smart point of competition and Facebook internally talking about TikTok, which is, a social media and sort of a video platform. And Facebook is responding to that competition by developing, I believe it's Lasso. Did we learn anything new today about that product with these leaked recordings?
It's really interesting that Zuckerberg wants to try to push Lasso in countries where TikTok is not yet big. And I also found it interesting that he sees TikTok as sort of like Instagram Explore meets Instagram Stories, and that he's going to try to shift Instagram in that direction. Look, he's tried this many times over the years, copying products, trying to push them out to a similar user base, but we really haven't seen that really take hold except for with Instagram Stories. So it's always a shot in the dark. We'll see if it works, but it's very interesting that TikTok is the new existential threat on the competition side for Facebook.
Net Choice, Carl Szabo, and Bloomberg's Sarah Fryer, thank you both for joining me.